Hi everyone, it's Miss Binkley. Just wanted to welcome you to class. Today, your common lit assignment is Rikki Tikki Tavi, and I'm just going to show you as a reminder what we're going to do, and I'm going to read it aloud to you because I miss when we do our read alouds in class. Um, so the story Rikki Tikki Tavi is by Rudyard Kipling, and it was written. He was alive 1865 to 1936. If you're familiar with the Jungle Book, it's a short story from the Jungle Book. Remember, when you're in Common Lit, you have the option to read it aloud to you, which is great. Um, and I just want to model that. If you want to have it read aloud, you just click here. You can press play.
1893, Rudyard Kipling, 1865 to 1930s.
And it'll read aloud to you. Um, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and I'm going to do the reading and I'm going to model doing the activities with you. So we're going to start right here. At the hole where he went in, Red Eye called to Wrinkle Skin, "Hear what little Red Eye saith." Now I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. So I'm going to click on number 1 and it means said. Nag, come up and dance with death. Eye to eye and head to head. Keep the measure, Nag. This shall end when one is dead. At thy pleasure, Nag. Turn for turn and twist for twist. Run and hide thee, Nag. Ha! The hooded death has missed. Woe betide thee, Nag. So these are new words for me. Woe means great sorrow, and betide means happen to. So that's going to help us. There's tools here that will really help you in your comprehension of the story. This is a story of the Great War that Rikki Tikki fought single-handed through the bathrooms of the big bungalow in Segwali Cantonment. And I'm going to click here. And cantonment refers to a military garrison or camp. Darsy, the tailor bird, helped him, and Chuchundra, the muskrat, who never comes out into the middle of the floor but always creeps around by the wall, gave him advice. But Rikki Tikki did the real fighting. He was a mongoose, rather like this little cat in his fur and his tail, but quite like a weasel in his head and his habits. His eyes and the end of his restless nose were pink. He could scratch himself anywhere he pleased with any leg, front or back that he chose to use. He could fluff up his tail till it looked like a bottle brush, and his war cry as he scuttled through the long grass was "Rikki tikki tikki chick." One day a high summer flood washed him out of the burrow where he lived with his father and mother, and carried him kicking and screaming and clucking down a roadside ditch. He was found a little wisp of grass floating there, and clung to it till he lost his senses. When he revived, he was lying in the hot sun in the middle of the garden path, very draggled. Draggled. I think I can assume I know what it means, but let's check. He was wet and dirty. And a small boy was saying, "Here's a dead mongoose, let's have a funeral." "No," said his mother, "let's take him in and dry him. Perhaps he really isn't dead." They took him into the house, and a big man picked him up with his finger and thumb, and said he was not dead but half choked. So they wrapped him in cotton wool and warmed him, and he opened his eyes and sneezed. "Now," said the big man, he was an Englishman who had just moved into the bungalow, "don't frighten him. We'll see what he'll do." It's the hardest thing in the world to frighten a mongoose because he's eaten up from nose to tail with curiosity. The motto of all the mongoose family is "run and find out." And Rikki Tikki was a true mongoose. He looked at the cotton wool, decided that it was not good to eat, ran all around the table, sat up, put his fur in order, scratched himself, and jumped on the small boy's shoulder. "Don't be frightened, Teddy," said his father. "That's his way of making friends." "Ouch! He's tickling under my chin," said Teddy. Rikki Tikki looked down before the boy's collar and neck, snuffed at his ears, and climbed down to the floor where he sat rubbing his nose. "Good gracious," said Teddy's mother. "And that's a wild creature. I suppose he's so tame because you could have been kind to him." "All mongooses are like that," said her husband. "If Teddy doesn't pick him up by the tail or put him in the cage, he'll run in and out of the house all day long. Let's give him something to eat." They gave him a little piece of raw meat. Rikki Tikki liked it immensely, and when it was finished, he went to the veranda and sat in the sunshine and fluffed up his fur to make it dry to the roots. Then he felt better. I'm going to stop here. When you do your reading for Common Lit, remember our first rule is to read it completely through one time. And then you can go back and start looking at your guiding questions. So let's scroll up until we see guided question 1. And here it is. We're going to click it. And it says this poem describes. And then you have to decide what it describes. So what you're going to do is you're going to stop here. You're going to finish reading where we left off, and I would like you to answer question 1. So go ahead and pause. And when you've finished, you can press play again. Okay, great. Now that you've answered question 1, we can go ahead and go to question 2. I'm going to reread this part because I see the question 2 is right there. So let's reread. They took him into the house, and a big man picked him up between his finger and thumb. And he said he was not dead, but half choked. So they wrapped him in cotton wool and warmed him, and he opened his eyes and sneezed. Now, said the big man, he was an Englishman who had just moved into the bungalow, don't frighten him, and we'll see what he'll do. It's the hardest thing in the world to frighten a mongoose because he's eaten up from nose to tail with curiosity. The motto of the mongoose family is run and find out, and Rikki Tikki was a true mongoose. He looked at the cotton wool, decided it was not good to eat, ran all around the table, sat up, put his fur in order, and scratched himself and jumped on the boy's small shoulder. Question 2. What happened to Rikki after the flood? So again, press pause, answer your question, and then when you're done, you can press play again. Okay, our next question is question 3. So we're going to click on question 3. How did Rikki Tikki feel about his family? So using the paragraph above, you can find the answer, and you can answer it now, and then do the same thing. Move to question 4. How did Rikki Tikki spend his time in the house? And I want to remind you, you have the annotation school. So if you want to try and annotate that question 4, how did he spend his time in the house? You can look through here and find what you want and annotate it. So I'm going to look through question 4 and see how did he find his time in the house? So go ahead and press pause and annotate that. And then you can go on to question 5. Let's read this first. He spread out his hood more than ever, and Rikki Tikki saw the spectacle mark on the back of it that looks exactly like the eye part of a hook and eye fastening. He was afraid for the minute, but it is possible for a mongoose to stay frightened for any length of time. And though Rikki Tikki had never met a live cobra before, his mother had fed him on dead ones, and he knew that all a grown mongoose's business in life was to fight and eat snakes. Nag knew that too, and at the bottom of his cold heart, he was afraid. When Rikki Tikki is in the garden, he meets. So who does he meet? So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to read. And I'm going to say he meets Nag, but who is Nag? And I'm going to write he meets Nag. And it's telling me here that he is a big black cobra, right? So then you can go on and answer the rest of your questions. So go ahead and pause and answer the rest of your guiding questions. And then when you're done, we can look at the assessment. Okay, so we're in the assessment part. We need to make sure that we read the questions and we go to next. So part 1, which statement best expresses the theme of the story? You're going to go ahead and you're going to read through the questions, reread the story if you need to answer the questions. And when you're ready, you can go to next. And go ahead and work all the way through. How does Rikki Tikki respond to the cobras and what does this reveal about his character? So this is a question where you're going to have to answer it correctly. And in your opinion, which character of the story was the bravest? So again, we've done Common Lip before, but we want to make sure that you're completing it. Rikki Tikki Tavi is one of my favorite stories. I read parts of it aloud to you, and what we can do now, if you want to go back and reread it yourself, this is where you can highlight text, add annotations. You can go ahead and do that, but thank you very much.